Hey, it's Chuck Armstrong with Loudwire Nights, and this is Loudwire Nights on Demand. I love hearing these words come out of my mouth. We recently hung out with Henry Rollins. This first aired on Tuesday, October 1st. You're going to enjoy this one. You can call him a singer, a songwriter, a frontman, an actor, an author, a performer, an activist, a columnist, a podcaster, a record collector. You can call him whatever you want. There's no question that tonight's special guest, I'll say these words, is a living legend. He may bristle when I say that, and I hope it doesn't sound like I'm just blowing smoke, but I mean it when I say it's a privilege to get to share some time and space with our guest tonight. Henry Rollins, thank you for being on the show, man.
Oh, thank you very much.
Listen, you seem to always keep yourself busy. Do you ever spend time thinking about all that you've done? You know, what runs through your head when you start hearing those different things listed off?
I just consider myself extraordinarily fortunate in that I come from, solidly middle class and come from the minimum wage working world into music that took me into all kinds of other things. And that was, that's a long time ago. But life's been interesting. But for the most part, right time, right place, big mouth, lots of energy. and so that's kind of the story. But every once in a while, I see a list of something I've done, or I am reminded, and sometimes it makes my bones kind of ache for a minute. I'm like, wow, because I'm 63. I've been on stage since I was 19, and kind of pushing it, touring internationally, trying to make something to release out into the world since I was about 20, like really going for it. And that's kind of consumed me and obsessed me from 1981 or 80 to about right now. And I kind of live in the moment of I'm working on this thing, and when it's done, I'll get the next thing going. So I'm kind of running. And it's not about money or retirement, or I'm going to get the big house and be able to cool off and do what I really want. This is really what I want to do. And I'd be happy to live in a mud hut to be able to do it. And so it's never been about how many did it sell? Yeah. What did we make? I always strive for sustainability in my little companies. Like, can we keep the lights on? Can we do another one? And so I'm just fortunate and eternally grateful. And sometimes, really tired.
Well, I remember reading in one, it was a foreword to one of your books that you said, if everything you wrote in this book got erased, you would take great joy in writing it all over again. Yeah. Just because that's how much you love doing what you do.
Yeah, luckily, there are some people, it's all about the result, in that we're trying to get a commercial thing to market and have success. That's never been for me. This is not the bolt of cloth I'm cut from. I can't put it down because it's not dishonest. If you come in through the front door and state that's what we're into, well, that's fine. Yeah, that's truth in advertising. For me, it's the building of the thing. And I always use the analogy of being like a shipbuilder, in that you build this ship and you push it out to sea and it disappears over the horizon and you're happy. And why are you happy? Because the deck is clear and you can build something else. And that's the best part of getting a book out. The book comes back from the printer, and since I own the publishing company, I get the first box. And I have this unerring ability to open the book and find a typo immediately. Like, I can open to any page and no, and it's a mistake. And I'll look at the finished book for easily about 60 seconds. And then I shelve it. And unless I'm signing it or someone brings it to me to point out a typo, I never look at it again. Or unless I'm looking at a layout to see if what we need to do to improve something, I'm on to the next thing. And so that's the joy of finishing a book or finishing anything, is like the deck is clear and we can start scheming to build something else. And I feel lucky that is my, that is what brings the excitement, that it's not about the money or the sales or the success. The success is that the fact that I came up with an idea, I turned it into a physical item that takes up space, and I turned it loose. And luckily, there's enough of an audience who goes, well, okay, one more time, where I'm allowed to do it again. And that's kind of all I'm looking for, is the sustainability aspect. I just want to be doing this 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Have you always been like that with the sort of like, you look at it for 60 seconds and then you put it on the shelf? Were you that way with music too?
Yeah. And I was kind of done with records when we finished the mastering. Like when I got the test pressing back, or, later on the digital files, and I could hear it, like, okay, Like that, the mids are good. I'm fine. I sign off on it. And then I have to go out on tour. And so that's a whole other thing. And so the record for me was always just it was the thing that allowed me to go on tour. And if you're a guy like me, you're not going to sell many records. Like a big band, they give away more records in promotion than I sell. That doesn't matter to me. We did the best we could. It's the record we wanted to make. Who likes it, who doesn't like it? There's not a lot I can do about that, except smile, do the interview, and hold still for the photo. But it was always about now we can be on the road. And I learned that ethos in Black Flag. Black Flag was a very hardworking band, and it was Greg Ginn and Chuck Tukowski. They were like kind of the elders and the big dogs in the pack. And I learned my work ethic as far as like music and all of that from them, because they were unbreakable. No matter how much we hadn't slept or hadn't eaten, they're still like pulling the sled. I mean, it was intense, and I had to run to catch up. And I don't know if I ever made the grade, but I tried. And they were very utilitarian. Like we write songs, we record them, and then we leave on tour, and we'll see you in 2 years. And it was never about sales. It was always about make a good record, and then we're going to go out there and destroy them live. And that's kind of the way I've always been with as far as music. It's always about the live show. And the album, since it's not going to be on the radio or anything like that, we just want to be clear. Like make the songs hit hard as you want them to, and then let's go. Let's get in the van and go.
That's why your bones ache, man, because that's how you lived,
Yeah, my hero Iggy Pop. Many years ago, I would read an interview he ever does because he's really, really intelligent and very interesting. He just said, when I'm out there, there's no pain. And then you see him, he's all bleeding and he's fallen over and broke his face open or whatever. He's like, no pain. And I always strove for that, to be so in the minute of it. Afterwards, you're like, whoa. And I would often get off stage and pass out. I would get to the dressing room and have a little lie down and wake up 15 minutes later, like I had been out. And you pay. I mean, I've hung around with some ex-athletes, like pros, and they all walk like they've been beaten with a stick an hour before you met them because, hips, shoulders, all the joints, everything got smashed because they left it on the field. And I'm not advising that. I'm just saying that's the sacrifice. And I move with a lot of pain. I pop, click, and everything hurts because I did a lot to my back, my jaw, just a lot of broken bones, a lot of sutures, just from flying pint mugs, flying people, concussions, a lot of trips to the hospital. And it is what it is. And you pay later. And I'd rather have all of that than have taken my youth and used it lightly.
Yeah, no, I get that, man. Well, listen, you mentioned writing a book, and so I got to say congrats on your latest book, Volume 4 in your Stay Fanatic series.
Oh, thank you.
Lessons in Possession and Confessions of Obsession. I love it. Listeners can get details on this book. Order it at henryrollins.com. Now, this is the 4th volume in Stay Fanatic, which follows the earliest series, just called Fanatic. Right. And they're all really great dives into your fandom, your fanaticism, right? For music, for collecting, for your radio shows. How long does it take you to put these things together? Because they're pretty incredible tomes of, periods of time. How long are you working on these? Like, how long did Volume 4 take you?
Well, it's written in journal entry fashion. And so Volume 4 is the year of 2018. And so there's a good question. It's 2024. Why is the book from 2018?
There we go.
Well, because it takes a year to write it, but that's the beginning. Now I have to gather all the images, and I don't have a staff. It's me. So if you have ever seen Volume 4, there's about 700 images in that book. And besides 2 of them that Ian Mackay sent me, I scanned everything else. And so I learned myself Photoshop a while ago, and I'm like the scan boy. Then I have to fact check everything at least 3 times, because don't get a damned or Joy Division factoid wrong, because the train spotters, of which I am proudly one of, they'll just hang you out to dry because you got it wrong.
Yeah.
And don't get that wrong, please, man. Don't get a Fugazi fact wrong. Anyway, I got to make sure all that's intact, and then so there's multiple proofings. And then writing about the images, and then writing about the news clippings, which I find and glue into these things. And then there's a tour. And so volume 4 was edited and proofread in 26 countries while on tour. I'd come back between legs of the tour and scan, and then I'd leave again. And so it takes as long as it takes. While it takes a year to write the book, it takes quite a long time to proofread, edit. And so the book, sadly, gets dragged through like 5 proofreadings. And I want to get it right. And so it comes out and some people go, yay. And meanwhile, I'm working on the next one. Not that it matters. I got up at 4:33 this morning. I was at my desk by around 5:07 and start the day with radio. I do half an hour of radio programming a day to stay ahead. And then I go right into proofreading volume 5. And I do 5,000 words a day. I'm at December 24th or something. So I'm almost done with the next draft. And then I scan 5 to 7 items. And so every day, a little bit of scanning, every day, a little bit of proofreading. And I guarantee you 6 months from now, I'll still be working on that book. Meanwhile, it's 2024. Tonight, I'll be writing and inputting for the next one. And so I put it this way, if I could stop, I would. And that's the thing with writing. If I could stop, I would. Because it takes a long time. It's a thankless business. You play chess with your brain. And, I lose. And it's a very solitary task. No one can help you write, or maybe they can, but I don't collaborate really. So I sit alone and I work. And I get my big break from writing, and I go to the gym, and I come back and I do some more writing until it's time to read, and then I go to sleep. And so, and meanwhile, I'm writing 2 other books besides the Stay Fanatic book. So I'm always clacking away on something, and that's just what I've chosen to do. It's the hill I'm going to die on. And it's not like I'm trying to make it as a writer. It's just, it's what after all these years, it's what I do. And if I'm not touring, it's really what I do.
Well, and clearly you enjoy it. Like you said, if you can't stop doing it. But I'm curious, and I know this is kind of a weird question, especially given the nature of these Stay Fanatic books, because they find you looking back, they find you reflecting. Does that come natural to you as far as like pausing and looking back, reflecting on life, reflecting on things? Like is that something you're comfortable with?
I go at different degrees of comfort with that, because some you look back with any adult, you look back and some memories like, whoa, and some are just horrible. Some are just merely embarrassing, and that you're getting off easy. Some are just wretched. And so I'm in a position where people send me evidence of my past on a regular basis. Like I come out of a venue somewhere and some guy comes up with pictures of me I have never seen. Dude, would you sign these? I'm like, wait a minute. Like, where did you get these? Like, that looks like Richmond, Virginia, 1984. So I remember the back of the venue, and I know that the hair I had at that summer. Like, how'd you know? I was like, well, I got that kind of memory. Where'd you get these? Oh, my grandfather took them. But so my past is basically shoved in my face all the time. And believe it or not, I'm not that interested in my past. I'm interested in the past of the Velvet Underground, John Coltrane, like the people who loom large in my mind. However, I've got a few stories to tell, and they're, some of them are pretty cool. And so I use the Stay Fanatic books to say, well, I haven't been to this venue since 1983, and here's a clipping from that year, because I'm the guy who kept all that stuff. And so I'm 63, sitting here talking to you right now. I don't want to be 20. I mean, I'm fine with being 63. It is what it is. And I don't want to live in the past. I'm fine with 2024. It's a very exciting time in history. But I think recall and a fair rendering of music history, if you could be part of it, if you have the artifacts that you can show off, well, then why not? Because someone should tell the story. And that's what I want to do. The Stay Fanatic books, if you've ever read The Fall by Camus, it's a guy at a bar talking to another guy. It's a one-way conversation. And that's kind of what the Stay Fanatic books are. It's like looking for another collector nerd going, right? Like yeah. The Belgian pressing of this Buzzcock 7-inch, amazing. Where'd you get yours? I know. And it's basically looking for the other person going like, oh my God, I never thought I'd meet another loser like you. And that's why there's so many exclamation points in the book. And I had always address it to a single person. Not like, hey, fanatic, like, hey, fanatic, like, hey, fellow record obsessive. And I'm just trying to find that other person who just goes, oh, I picked up on the signal. And that's how I build the radio show. I have a single person in mind, like the lonely boy in Utah who goes to school in the trench coat, has his fingernails painted black, loves Joy Division or whatever. People make fun of him. And he's got like one line of connectivity to the outside world. It's me every Saturday night on KCRW. And that's why I go, hey, fanatic, you're like, I got you, man. And like, don't despair, don't self-harm. We got music. And we'll always have the music. So like, be good to yourself and keep rocking. And that's kind of the spirit of those books. And I write them for myself and for any single reader who might want to pick up on the signal. And if no one gets it, I totally understand. Like I can see, what makes me all enthusiastic and, get all excited about like some contract I found at some record signing. I'm like, aha, look, this band got a bad deal. I can prove it. There's at least 4 people per every square million miles who go like, oh my God, that's so cool. Everyone else politely nods and goes, right, I really have to go. So I understand that it's a very limited pool of interest. However, the older I get, the more interesting all this stuff becomes to me. And maybe it's because I'm no longer making the music. I'm kind of in a more custodial role as I'm cleaning up around it. Like Ian Mackay, my best friend, the guy from Fugazi and Minor Threat and Discord Records. We are both these, the guys who didn't get high through the 80s and 90s. Like we're still standing up and can finish a sentence. Ian far better than I. A lot of people have been giving us their tapes, their flyers, because they know that we'll maintain them and database them. And so we have all kinds of rolls of negatives, magnetic tape, cassettes, flyer collections. Like, Ian, here, keep these for me because my basement floods and I'm a maniac. Ian and I have become these people who are kind of picking up after a lot of our maniac peers who are just wild and crazy and they don't know where their tapes are. They find them in their mom's attic and they send them to us. 100 years from now, they'll still be in a climate controlled environment.
Yeah.
Because Ian and I have like put in the money to build these facilities to keep this stuff. And we're 2 of those people, and we're not unique. There's all kinds of people doing this. We're 2 people who kept copies of all the flyers and the receipts and the original layouts of the newsletters and the album artwork, etc. Because it occurred to me, like when I was in Black Flag, I was a guy in the band, but I was also a fan. I thought the flyers looked amazing. I thought Raymond Pettibone's artwork was brilliant. And whenever he made a flyer for us, I would grab like 5 off the stack, put them in an envelope, date it and seal it. And I only opened those envelopes a few years ago to put the pieces of paper into an acid-free environment, and they look pristine. And so, like when Glenn Danzig of the Misfits would like hand screen gig posters, and they're beautiful. He's a great artist. He'd give them to me. They lived, stored safely until I was stable enough to where I could bring them home. And I immediately had them framed archivally. And they look like the day he gave them to me in like 1981 or something.
Yeah.
They could have easily just been, eaten on and like thrown out. That's what happens to a lot of this stuff. Not on my watch. And I just think all that stuff is worth preserving because the music was great. The times were amazing, and they're not coming back. And there's very little evidence. Nowadays you pick up your phone and you're a journalist. In those days, someone had a camera at a show. You're like, no way, you spent money on film, because it was a broke scene. And the Rolling Stones and the New York Times of the world, those who have money and a budget and film, weren't paying attention. And so it's a very underserved time as far as documentation. So when you can find a flyer or a ticket or a set list, wow. It's like, your foot falls through the sand and voila, you're inside Tutankhamun's tomb. Like it's a big find. And it's like chasing the Maltese Falcon. The older I get, the more joy this brings me and the further obsessed I become. And really amazing discoveries I've been making in the last few years. Like I've been able to purchase like collections. People are like aging out or changing their minds on thing. And they go, hey, you want to buy this? I'm like, well, yeah, I do. And lots of receipts and contracts and tickets where I can connect historical dots and go, aha, I have proof this band played here because I've got the bill for the microphone the guy broke. And that kind of stuff to me is more and more fascinating the older I get. And that's kind of sort of what I use the Stay Fanatic books to be able to show. And that's why it's an 8.5 by 11 format with a lot of pictures. I have a lot of things to show you. Like if you came to my place, you know, there's like the walls behind you. That's kind of how my place looks. Like lots of framed things, lots of records, everything organized and organized and over organized and
right, yeah.
that because, you know, we men must control.
That's right.
And that's kind of sort of where I'm at. I'm like part journalist, archivist, researcher guy as I go into decrepitude.
Well, let me ask you this. So I think it's the very first Fanatic book you wrote that, you know, you never regret the records that you bought. You only regret the records that you didn't buy or that you didn't get. Yep. Obviously your obsession, your fanaticism with music, it far surpasses just records, right? I mean, you're talking about the receipts and the ticket stubs and all that. Is there something out there that, like, is there a white whale for you, whether it's a record or some artifact that you've been looking for and you haven't found, or something that came across and you didn't get it and you kind of been regretting that?
As far as a holy grail, a Maltese falcon, a white whale, I have many. Some I can disclose. Some I must keep my cards close to my vest.
I get that, yeah.
But years ago, I was sitting in a Starbucks writing an article for the LA Weekly, and a pressing of Hawkwind's awesome Silver Machine 7-inch United Artists pressed in India came up on Discogs for a chunk of change. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. So I wrote the guy, I said, can we work on that price? He said, yeah. You know, and he took some money off. And I still went, it still hurts. And it was bought. Like a second later, it was gone. I saw another copy of that on Discogs for like $5,000. And it's just been sitting there. And, you know, the guy, he'll never sell it at that price. He has no idea. He can dream big. No one cares that much. And at some point, I'm just going to write him and go, look, man, you know, many years ago, this happened, like in 2011 or something. Can we talk? And that's one of those records. I know it's out there. There's the Black Album by The Damned, their fourth album. It's a masterpiece, in my opinion. It was pressed in Ireland. Like it's so rare. I've never seen one except for online. I've never seen one for sale. No one's ever even offered me one for a hideous amount of money. Do I want one? Yes. Is the music any different than on any other pressing of the record? No, I just want the thing.
Yeah.
And I avail myself to these obsessions because it's not an addiction to gambling. It's not an addiction to cocaine or fast cars or dangerous living. And if it's too expensive, my inherent will to eat every day will preclude me from buying it. So there's things like that. There's also things in people's collections that they will never, ever turn loose, that I am unabashedly Kelly Green jealous over because I want what they have. They will never, you never. And why should they? It's so cool. But what they are doing with those items is sadly not much. What I could do with them as far as research and connecting of dots, maybe they'll let me scan them and that would be okay. I just would be able to, I'd love to be able to use them for historical research purposes. I don't need to have them. I just would like to be able to get some evidence and connect some dots. And so there's a few things out there that make me hurt. And just a handful of things that I know I'll probably just never see. Like different acetates, like for different different acetates for different bands. I know they're out there. because I've seen them listed, and I went to the seller like, hey, can I buy that? Oh, you missed it. I just sold it. It probably sold to another old man like me who knows exactly what it is and has no need to sell it. And there's a few people who have things like original album artwork, and I've written them. I said, hey, can we talk about selling that? And they've written me back a pretty abusive letters like, no, bite me, you suck. And I got it, you don't. I'm like, wow, ow. like and so across all genres, there's records I'll always be looking for. And there's a guy in Australia, used to work at a really good record store called Greville Street Records in Melbourne. If you're ever there, beeline from the airport to that record store. And he sadly passed away. He went his entire life looking for a copy of Green Fuzz by Jerry Alvey and the Green Fuzz, a great Texas psychedelic song. Cramps covered it on their Psychedelic Jungle album. It is, just look it up sometime. It's just a killer song. In his life, he just wanted to see the actual vinyl. And I've never seen it. I don't know if I don't know if I ever will. And he would say that, I just want to see it before I go. And the poor guy went, and he never, no one ever said, here, man, touch it, now give it back.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Henry, I love hearing this, man. Thanks for sharing all this.
Sure.
I know last year a major focus for you was your speaking tour. You covered a lot of ground with that. And because of that, you were doing some interviews. And I remember one of the headlines, and a few people picked it up too, was that I think you were answering questions from fans, and you said, you're done with music, making music. You're done playing on stage with a band. You don't think about lyrics anymore. I think that was a year and a half ago or so. Do you still feel that way about kind of your future as far as music goes?
Yeah, I have not thought lyrically since about the year 2000, 2001.
Okay.
And truly. And I got some amazing offers like, hey, we're hanging around doing nothing. How about we get together and try and write something? And some of these invites, pretty damn tempting. When Keith Levine of Public Image, the guitar player of Public Image, says, hey, he's just he's sadly passed away, one of my favorite guitar players of all time. Another existing band said, hey, we have this instrumental track on our upcoming record. How about you put some vocals on it? And I have every one of this band's records. I am such a fan. And I wrote back, I said, thank you, youngster. But, I'm really done. And I don't want to slow your record down. And I don't want to be like the weird old dude on a young person's record. And I just don't want to be old and in the way. And I'll pass. And I had to be careful, that I didn't hurt the guy's feelings or make him feel foolish. So I'm not trying to humiliate him. No, I can't possibly. I'm like, I just, you're young and you got racing stripes on your side, man. You're jamming. You're in the moment. And my moment is behind me. So let me just buy your records and go to your shows and, buy the limited edition blood splattered variant of the vinyl.
Yeah.
And so I've passed on a few things. I said Dinosaur Jr. played in New York a bunch of nights years ago. And I went to New York to go MC the shows and be a fan. And Jay in the band asked me, would you sing on one of the encores? I'm like, well, and they're like, come on, you're here all week. I'm like, well, okay. And I did. And then a couple of years ago, I did a Black Flag song called Rise Above as a duet with someone you've never heard of named Cyndi Lauper as a benefit for her agency that supports LGBTQ homeless teenagers. I was like, wow, what a interesting food group. Hell yeah, I'll be part of this benefit. I think it's called Home for the Holidays. And my very smart manager came up with this duet idea. And Cyndi said, let's do it. And she ended up being really fun. And so there I am, this 50-something-year-old wheezing through a 2.5 minute Black Flag song. I thought my heart was going to stop. We got to the end of it. And Cyndi is a classically trained singer. She sings from the diaphragm. She can sing all day and not break sweat. I'm in pretty good shape. I'm one of those 6 days, 7 days in the gym guys. And I was like, okay, 3 more seconds, one more breath. And I tried to walk off stage without face planting. And I said, man, if you made me do that 20 more times tonight, I just don't know. And so one of the things I get right is I know when it's over, and I'm smart enough not to come back for the encore. Like, hey, you miss me? I never ask that question. I just leave. Not in the middle of the agreement. I don't leave mid-tour. I finish something and I go, okay, I'm done. And then I don't do a farewell tour. I don't do this big announcement. I just stop and immediately find a new thing to be a freshman at and go running forward into that. And so I call it the hard out. I don't quiet quit. I don't fade. I
Yeah.
just split after every obligation has been met. You don't mess people up.
Right. Yeah.
And when we came to the end of a tour years ago, I called my bandmates. I said, fellas, we have like Tor Heyerdahl, we have taken Kon-Tiki to the sea. The mission is over. And thank you so much. And immediately, they're all great players. They were all employed like the next day. Like one was in Blue Man Group like the next day. The other was like playing with like some big country star. Like they all found employment very quickly because they're very talented. And they said, hey, great. And I never really thought anything past that. I called my manager who had like his heart dropped out of his shirt, like, because he just sees 10% of his action going away.
Sure.
And for me, it's never been about the money. It's like, when I'm done, stay true to the thing. Like, when you're done, be done. And I think there's a lot of musicians out there who are done, but for financial reasons, divorces, kids, some idea of a career in art, which is weird, they still keep going out there. Like, all right, kids, remember this one? No, but my grandfather might. And I just never wanted to be that guy having to play because I had to. And I see some of these bands out there with, the guitar over that hardened large stomach. And even their sweat looks gray. And they get through the song with that grim look on their face, like, don't die, don't die, don't die. And quite often the playing is really sturdy because they can actually play the instrument now. But it's just this weird look at the past while in the present. It's like reanimating something.
Yeah.
Like putting in servo motors into a corpse. Like, it talks, it walks. And it's not for me to judge anyone because I'm a wretch. It's just not for me to ever want to do that. The money wouldn't spend right to me. It'd be ill-gotten gains. And it would be so depressing to be out there with your 20-year-old lyrics coming back at you. And I'm not saying I disagree with things I wrote, but that was then, and this is now. And so I'd rather be in the now. And selfishly, it's great to not go out there and make a bloody fool out of myself. Because if I went out and toured now, there'd be no interest in my bandmates and I playing those songs. If I did a European music festival, we would be opening for like every group of 18-year-olds. And I don't have an ego with that. I mean, because that's kind of how the band always was. We were always opening for the younger, more popular act. But we would just be on the bill because the promoter, like, oh my God, it's Henry. I love that guy. Give the rescue dog a show. I just don't want to be in that position where the promoter's like, we really don't want to do the show, but we'll give it to you just because my dad used to promote your shows. And when it's time, in my mind, when it's time to go, man, just go.
Yeah.
And go find a different vine to swing from. Don't do nothing. Reinvent yourself. Go and fail at something, but don't try and relitigate the past. And that's just me, though. And I'm not trying to tell anyone else what to do. I wouldn't dare.
So let me ask you about relitigating the past. So I asked you about your Maltese Falcon, your white whale. One for me, and it's not nearly as impossible to find as what you described, but I always keep my eye out for Rollins band's Wait. I never got it on vinyl. I know there's the original clear pressing. There's a reissue of a red pressing, all that. So I always keep my eye out for that. But as I was kind of preparing for this chat, I didn't quite realize it's the 30th anniversary of that album this year. It came out in 1994.
I wasn't keeping track. Okay.
Yeah. Well, so I guess that sort of answers my question, but like a milestone like that, does that ever pop into your head or anything like that?
Well,
clearly not.
You just mentioned it, and no, that kind of thing doesn't. The Grammy Museum called me years ago and said, we'd like to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Damaged, the Black Flag record.
Yeah.
I said, well, it's not my record. It's not my record label. And I didn't write any of the songs. They went, but you're the guy. And I said, well, I've got, some things from it that might fit in a glass box, for people to walk by and go, who's that? And they simply never followed up. I would have gladly driven the stuff down to the building downtown and let them have it for 8 months or whatever. I'm friendly with them. They're very nice people. But it wasn't important enough for them to ever call me back. And I'm busy. They didn't call back, and I only noticed like a year later. I'm like, oh, it's 2022. Oh, well. And so it only occurred to me that Wait is its 30th anniversary when you just mentioned it several seconds ago.
There you go.
And just so you know, the reissues, like the non-clear vinyl of that one and the End of Silence, were made from digital masters because Imago Records has actually lost the tapes.
Oof.
And they never registered those records with the RIAA.
Right.
And it's too bad because I think my bandmates would have liked those gold and platinum shingles on their wall. Me, I've been given a bunch of them for different records I've been on and stuff. And I usually just autograph the front and we give it away for some kind of fund drive. And I kept one that I'm not on. Linda Ramone of the Ramones gave me a gold First Ramones album. So I've done a lot of work on behalf of the estate.
Yeah.
But all the ones that I'm part of, I've given away. But my bandmates probably would have liked to have had those to say, hey, like we did something. But the record company never registered the records, never kept track of the tapes. And so those reissues come from digital sources, probably CDs. And it's sad because I've never seen them. I just know that they can't be from the masters because I know a thing or two. And so that's just a major label greed.
For sure,
and that's too bad because it's doing rock and roll a great disservice.
Well, and it helps me now, focus my sights on the original clear pressing of that.
Yeah, the other ones I would walk by.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good to know. Henry Rollins, I can't thank you enough for the time, man. It's such a privilege to chat with you. Listeners can stay caught up on everything in your world at henryrollins.com. Details there on your radio show, your podcast, your books, everything. But man, thank you. The door is open anytime. Anytime you have a few minutes, you want to chat or talk about what you're up to, you're always welcome back, man.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
That wraps up this episode of Loudwire Nights on Demand. Stay caught up with everything happening in the world of rock and metal on the Loudwire app and at loudwire.com.